Let's get one thing straight. You were never meant to chase love. You were never designed to beg for attention, to fight for a man's approval, or to prove your worth to someone who can't see it. You are the prize. And the moment you start acting like it, the game changes. Think about this. When was the last time you saw a diamond chasing someone down the street, begging to be picked up? Never. Diamonds sit in the display case, untouched, protected, desired. The right buyer doesn't haggle over their worth, he pays full price. Because a man who understands value doesn't negotiate it. But here's the problem. Too many women don't see themselves as the prize. They see themselves as a lucky participant in the game of love, hoping to get chosen. They shrink themselves, compromise their standards, and overextend their energy, all in the name of being liked, wanted, or loved. They become too available, too accommodating, too forgiving of behaviors that should never be tolerated. This happens when a woman forgets her own value. When she starts believing that a relationship or a man's validation is what completes her. She starts operating from scarcity rather than abundance. She thinks, what if I never meet another man like him? What if this is as good as it gets? So she holds on to something or someone that was never meant to be permanent. But let me tell you something. A woman who knows she is the prize doesn't beg for love. She doesn't chase validation. She doesn't cling to relationships that make her feel small. She attracts. See, attraction isn't just about physical beauty. It's about the energy you carry, the confidence you exude, the boundaries you set. It's about knowing deep in your soul that you are already complete, with or without a man. A woman who understands she is the prize walks differently. She moves with certainty, not desperation. She sets standards, not ultimatums. She knows that if a man doesn't treat her right, he's simply not the right man, and she won't lower herself to convince him otherwise. Let's talk about energy. Have you ever noticed how certain people walk into a room and instantly command respect without saying a word? That's the power of self-worth. A woman who believes in herself doesn't need to prove anything. Her presence does that for her. But here's what most women do. They overcompensate. They try too hard. They think, if I give more, he'll see my worth. So they overgive, overlove, and overextend until they are left empty. And then what happens? The man doesn't appreciate it. He takes it for granted. He pulls away. And suddenly she starts questioning herself. What did I do wrong? You did nothing wrong except forgetting that you never had to prove your worth in the first place. The right man sees it without you having to over-explain, over-prove, or over-give. Now let's talk about confidence. Confidence is not arrogance. It's not about acting superior or untouchable. It's about knowing deep down that you are worthy of love, respect, and commitment, and refusing to settle for anything less. Confidence is being okay with being alone rather than accepting the bare minimum. It's knowing that rejection is not a reflection of your worth. It's redirection towards something better. It's understanding that just because a man doesn't choose you, it doesn't mean you are any less valuable. A man can only see in you what you first see in yourself. If you see yourself as ordinary, he will treat you as ordinary. If you see yourself as a woman of worth, he will treat you accordingly. Or he will walk away because he knows he can't meet your standard. And that's okay. Because the right man doesn't fear your standards. He rises to meet them. Let's go deeper. What does it actually look like to act like the prize? It means you don't wait around for mixed signals or half-hearted efforts. It means you don't settle for inconsistency or excuses. It means you don't invest in a man who hasn't invested in you. It means that your life, your dreams, and your happiness don't revolve around whether or not a man chooses you. Because you choose yourself first. A woman who knows she is the prize is busy living. She's thriving. She's working on her goals, deepening her passions, and loving herself fully. She's not sitting by the phone waiting for a text. She's not overanalyzing a man's every move, trying to decipher his interest. She's too focused on being the best version of herself to worry about whether or not she's good enough for a man. And because of that, she attracts men who recognize her value, men who are secure, confident, and emotionally available, men who step up, not step back. But let me be clear, acting like the prize isn't about playing games. It's not about manipulation or making a man chase you out of ego. It's about authenticity. It's about showing up as your full, radiant self and allowing the right man to recognize that. Because when you finally own your worth, when you finally stop chasing and start attracting, something shifts. You stop tolerating less than you deserve. You stop doubting yourself. You stop waiting for someone to tell you that you're special because you already know you are. And that changes everything. Too many people walk into relationships carrying wounds they never took the time to heal. They don't realize that what they haven't dealt with will eventually deal with them. So you can't build a strong relationship on a weak foundation. If you don't do the inner work, your past will bleed into your present, and you'll find yourself repeating the same painful cycles over and over again. Think about it. How many times have you found yourself in a relationship that started great, only to see it unravel in the same familiar ways? You say, not again. I thought this time was different. But if you look deeper, you'll see that the common denominator in all those situations is you. That's not to place blame, that's to place power back in your hands. Because once you take responsibility for your healing, everything changes. Pain that isn't processed turns into patterns. If you've been betrayed in the past and never worked through it, you might start distrusting every new person who enters your life, even if they've given you no reason to. If you've been abandoned, you might cling too tightly or push people away before they get a chance to leave you. If you've been in toxic relationships, you might unconsciously seek out the same type of dynamic because it's familiar, even if it's unhealthy. See, your heart remembers what your mind forgets. If you've experienced heartbreak and haven't healed from it, your body, your emotions, and your subconscious will react in ways you may not even be aware of. You'll find yourself triggered by situations that shouldn't bother you. You'll overreact to things that don't deserve such a strong response. And worst of all, you'll sabotage good relationships before they even have a chance to grow. That's why healing is not optional, it's necessary. Because when you don't heal, you make the next person pay for what the last person did. You hold them accountable for pain they never caused. You expect them to fix wounds they never created. And that's not fair to them or to you. So how do you heal? You start by getting honest with yourself. You stop pretending that time alone will fix everything. Time doesn't heal all wounds. Intentional effort does. You have to sit with your pain, face it, and do the work to release it. That might mean therapy. That might mean journaling. That might mean cutting ties with toxic people who keep you stuck in old cycles. You also have to forgive not just others, but yourself. Because let's be real, sometimes the hardest thing to move past is the regret we carry for allowing certain things to happen. Maybe you stayed too long in a situation that broke you. Maybe you ignored the red flags. Maybe you betrayed yourself just to keep someone else happy. And now you hold on to guilt and shame, replaying your mistakes like a movie on repeat. But listen to me, you are not your past. You are not the mistakes you made. You are not the heartbreak you endured. You are not the version of you that settled for less than you deserved. You have the power to rewrite your story, but only if you let go of the pain that's been holding you hostage. Healing also requires releasing the need for closure. Too many people stay stuck because they're waiting for an apology that will never come, for an explanation that won't change a thing. Closure isn't something someone else gives you, it's something you give yourself. It's deciding that your peace is more important than their validation. It's understanding that moving on has nothing to do with them and everything to do with you. And let's talk about boundaries, because healing means protecting your progress. If you're serious about breaking old patterns, you can't keep entertaining the same type of people who caused your wounds in the first place. You can't keep inviting toxicity into your life and expecting different results. Healing means knowing what you will and won't tolerate. It means saying no without guilt. It means walking away from anything that threatens your peace. One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking they can heal while being in the same environment that broke them. But you can't grow in a space that's still feeding your wounds. If that means taking a break from dating, do it. If that means cutting off access to people who only drain you, do it. If that means stepping back and focusing on yourself, do it. Because healing isn't about convenience, it's about commitment. Another part of healing is learning to trust again. Not just other people, but yourself. Because when you've been hurt, your first instinct is to build walls, to shut people out, to believe that if you never let anyone in, you'll never get hurt again. But those walls don't just keep pain out, they keep love out too. The goal isn't to become so guarded that no one can reach you. The goal is to become so secure in yourself that you can recognize the difference between someone who deserves your trust and someone who doesn't. And that starts with trusting yourself, trusting your intuition, trusting that you've learned from your past, trusting that you can make better choices, trusting that you don't have to repeat old mistakes. Because when you trust yourself, you won't ignore the red flags. You won't second guess your standards. You won't settle for anything less than what aligns with your worth. Healing also means finding happiness within yourself before seeking it in someone else. Too often, people expect a relationship to fill a void that only self-love can. They think, once I find the right person, I'll feel whole. But if you enter a relationship feeling empty, it won't complete you. It will only magnify your wounds. Love is not about finding someone to fix you. It's about being whole on your own and allowing someone to complement, not complete you. That means learning to enjoy your own company. That means discovering who you are outside of relationships. That means creating a life that fulfills you so that when the right person comes along, they're not your source of happiness. They're simply an addition to it. God likes nothing more than a single person. Everything else has to work and serve a purpose that is beyond them. Healing isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's about becoming aware of your triggers and working through them. It's about recognizing when old wounds are trying to resurface and choosing to respond differently. It's about loving yourself enough to let go of what no longer serves you. Because when you heal, you stop looking for love out of loneliness. You stop choosing people from a place of emptiness. You stop settling just to avoid being alone. You start attracting relationships that align with your worth. And most importantly, you become the version of yourself that the right man, the one who is whole, ready, and capable of loving you the way you deserve, can actually recognize and appreciate. The kind of love you attract is a direct reflection of the standards you set. If you keep accepting less than you deserve, you'll keep getting it. If you keep making excuses for bad behavior, that behavior will continue. If you don't set clear boundaries, people will push them. And if you don't respect your own worth, don't expect anyone else to. Let's get something straight. Standards are not preferences. Preferences are about the surface, how tall he is, what kind of car he drives, how much money he makes. Standards, on the other hand, are about character, consistency, values, and emotional maturity. A preference might be, I want a man who takes me on fancy dates. A standard is, I want a man who respects my time, follows through on his word, and makes an effort to build a meaningful connection with me. See the difference? When you raise your standards, you stop settling for men who are inconsistent, emotionally unavailable, or who only show up when it's convenient for them. You stop wasting time on men who text at midnight but disappear during the day. You stop entertaining men who give you crumbs and call it a meal. But here's the truth. Raising your standards is not about making a list of demands for men to follow. It's about the way you carry yourself. It's about what you allow and what you reject. It's about how you communicate your needs and whether or not you stick to them when they're not met. See, a lot of people talk about having high standards, but the real test comes when they have to enforce them. Because it's easy to say, I won't accept inconsistent effort. But what happens when a man you really like starts pulling away, sending mixed signals, and only putting in effort when he feels like it? Do you call it out and walk away? Or do you start making excuses, telling yourself, maybe he's just busy. Maybe he'll change. Maybe I'm expecting too much. That's where most people get stuck. They know what they deserve, but when emotions get involved, they start lowering the bar. They accept less because they're afraid of losing the connection. They ignore the warning signs because they don't want to start over. They settle for potential instead of reality. But here's the thing. Potential means nothing if it's never realized. You can't build a relationship based on who someone could be. You have to judge them based on who they are right now. And if right now they are inconsistent, emotionally unavailable, or treating you like an option, that's all you need to know. Now, let's talk about the fear of being too much. So many women are afraid to have high standards because they've been conditioned to believe that men will run if they expect too much. So they shrink, they compromise, they lower their standards just enough to be more likable. But let me tell you something. The right man will never be intimidated by your standards. He will be inspired by them. A man who is truly ready for a relationship won't see your standards as a burden. He will see them as a challenge to step up. And the ones who complain, the ones who say you're too demanding, too picky, or that you should just be grateful, those are the ones who were never going to meet your standards anyway. They just wanted you to lower them so they wouldn't have to do the work. Another important thing to understand, your standards are not just about men. They are about the way you treat yourself. If you say you want a man who respects you, but you don't even respect yourself, how do you expect to attract that energy? If you say you want a man who is emotionally available, but you're still entertaining men who play games, what message are you sending? Your standards have to start with you. That means taking care of yourself, mentally, emotionally, and physically. That means creating a life that you love instead of waiting for a man to complete it. That means having boundaries, not just with men, but with friends, family, and even yourself. It means understanding that loneliness is not a reason to settle. Too many people drop their standards because they're afraid of being alone. They convince themselves that something is better than nothing. But let me tell you, nothing is better than the wrong thing, because the wrong relationship will drain you. It will break your spirit. It will leave you feeling more alone than you ever did when you were single. You need to be okay with walking away from anything that doesn't meet your standards. That's not arrogance. It's self-respect. And self-respect means being willing to lose people who were never truly for you in the first place. It also means being patient. When you raise your standards, the dating pool will shrink. Not everyone will be able to meet your expectations, but that's a good thing because it means you're filtering out the ones who are never right for you anyway. Yes, it might take longer to find the right relationship, but would you rather wait for something great or settle for something mediocre just because it's available? And let's be clear, raising your standards doesn't mean expecting perfection. No one is perfect, including you. But there is a difference between imperfection and incompatibility. There is a difference between small flaws and fundamental deal breakers. A man who truly values you will make mistakes, but he will also make an effort. He won't be perfect, but he will be consistent. He won't always get it right, but he will be accountable. He won't always know exactly what you need, but he will listen, learn, and adjust. So stop lowering your standards for people who were never meant to reach them. Stop making excuses for behavior that doesn't align with your worth. Stop settling for relationships that leave you feeling insecure, confused, or emotionally drained. Because at the end of the day, the quality of your relationships is a direct reflection of the standards you set and what you're willing to accept. One of the biggest reasons women struggle to attract the right man is because they spend too much time entertaining the wrong ones. They keep doors open that should have been closed a long time ago. They hold on to men who aren't truly available, emotionally, mentally, or physically. And then they wonder why they're exhausted, frustrated, and questioning whether real love. Listen to me. Every moment you spend on the wrong man is a moment stolen from the right one. Every time you allow inconsistency, settle for mixed signals, or cling to potential instead of reality, you're blocking your own blessing. But let's be honest, it's not always easy to let go. You tell yourself, maybe he'll change, maybe he just needs time. Maybe if I love him harder, he'll finally see my worth. But let me tell you the truth. If a man truly values you, he won't put you in a position where you have to prove your worth to him. He won't keep you guessing. He won't treat you like an option. He won't make you feel like you have to fight for his love, attention, or respect. But too many women settle for bare minimum effort because they're afraid to be alone. They think, well, at least he texts me sometimes. At least he shows up when he feels like it. At least he hasn't completely disappeared. Let me tell you something. You are not an at least kind of woman. You are not here to accept scraps of affection from a man who doesn't even know what he wants. You deserve clarity, consistency, and commitment. And if a man can't give you that, then he has no place in your life. But here's the tricky part. Sometimes the wrong men don't look wrong at first. They come in disguised as everything you've ever wanted. They say the right things. They make promises that sound good. They show you just enough effort to keep you hooked, but never enough to build something real. And that's where you have to be smart. That's where you have to look beyond words and pay attention to actions. Because words can be manipulated. Promises can be empty. But a man's consistent actions, that's where the truth is. A man who is serious about you won't just say he cares, he will show it. He won't just talk about a future with you, he will actively build it. He won't leave you feeling anxious, uncertain, or confused. He will bring you peace, stability, and security. And if you're not getting that, then you have to ask yourself, why am I still here? Why am I still giving my time, energy, and heart to someone who isn't fully invested in me? The answer for many women comes down to attachment. They get attached to what they thought the relationship could be rather than what it actually is. They hold on to potential even when reality is screaming, this isn't working. Let me tell you something. Potential doesn't build relationships, effort does. A man's potential won't keep you warm at night. It won't wipe your tears when you're hurt. It won't give you the love and security you deserve. Only consistent action can do that. But here's where it gets even deeper. Sometimes it's not just about the man. It's about the emotional patterns you've developed over time. If you grew up watching unhealthy relationships, if you've been hurt before and never healed, or if you've been conditioned to accept less than you deserve, then you might not even realize that you're choosing men who reinforce what feels familiar to you. That's why breaking free from the wrong men isn't just about walking away. It's about reprogramming your mindset. It's about unlearning unhealthy patterns and realizing that love should not be confusing, exhausting, or painful. It's about understanding that you are worthy of effort, honesty, and real commitment. And part of that process, learning to be okay with letting go. Learning to stop chasing, convincing, and waiting for a man to wake up and realize your worth. Learning to stop making excuses for behavior that disrespects or disregards you. Because the moment you stop entertaining the wrong men, you create space for the right one to find you. You free yourself from cycles that keep you stuck. You send a clear message to the universe, to yourself, and to every man you meet. I will no longer accept anything less than what I truly deserve. But here's the challenge. Sometimes the wrong men don't leave easily. They linger. They reach out just enough to keep you emotionally invested. They sense when you're pulling away and suddenly start giving you just enough effort to keep you hoping. And that's where you have to be strong. That's where you have to remind yourself, this is not love. This is not enough. This is not what I want for my life. Because when you keep going back to something that doesn't serve you, you're only delaying what's truly meant for you. You're telling yourself, this is all I deserve, when deep down, you know that's a lie. And let's talk about emotional detox. Because when you finally let go of the wrong men, you have to give yourself time to reset. You have to resist the urge to fill that void with another unhealthy attachment. You have to sit with yourself, heal, and rediscover what you truly want in a relationship. That means no checking in on your ex, no responding to late night texts from the guy who only wants your attention when it's convenient for him, no reopening doors that should have stayed closed. It means clearing your energy. Because the wrong men don't just take up space in your life. They take up space in your mind, your emotions, and your heart. And until you fully release them, you won't have the capacity to receive the love you actually desire. It also means redefining your standards. Because once you remove the wrong energy from your life, you have to be intentional about what you allow moving forward. You have to be willing to say no to anything that doesn't align with the kind of relationship you truly want. And yes, that might mean being single for a while. That might mean feeling uncomfortable as you break old habits. That might mean resisting the temptation to fall back into familiar but toxic patterns. But trust me, the temporary discomfort of letting go is nothing compared to the lifelong pain of settling for less. The right man cannot and will not find you if you're too busy entertaining the wrong one. Because the man who is truly meant for you, he won't play games with your heart. He won't leave you questioning where you stand. He won't make you feel like you have to beg for his attention, time, or love. Start recognizing the kind of love you want and the kind of love you lack in the life you have so that you can feel amazing, free, and full. But in order to receive that kind of love, you have to be willing to clear out everything that is not it. You have to create space for something real, something lasting, something worthy of the woman you are becoming. If you want to attract the right man, you must first become the right woman. This is not about changing yourself to fit someone else's expectations. It's about stepping into your power, building a life that excites you, and becoming the kind of person who naturally attracts a high-quality partner. Because here's the truth. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. Think about it. If you want a man who is confident, emotionally mature, ambitious, and loving, you have to ask yourself, Am I embodying those qualities myself? Because relationships are not about completing each other, they are about complementing each other. If you want a man who is stable and successful, but your life is chaotic and you lack direction, there will be a misalignment. If you desire deep love and connection, but you are disconnected from yourself, that energy will reflect in the kind of relationships you attract. This is where so many people go wrong. They put all their focus on finding the right man instead of becoming the kind of woman who naturally attracts him. They make lists of what they want in a partner, but they never stop to consider whether they are living up to those same standards. So let me ask you, what kind of woman do you need to become in order to attract the kind of relationship you truly desire? This is not about perfection. It's not about being flawless. It's about growth. It's about self-awareness. It's about continuously working on yourself, not just for the sake of attracting a partner, but because you deserve to live a fulfilling and empowered life. It starts with knowing who you are. What are your values? What excites you? What are your non-negotiables? What kind of energy do you bring into relationships? Because too many people enter relationships hoping that another person will give them clarity, happiness, and purpose. But the reality is, if you don't already have those things within yourself, no relationship will ever be enough to fill that void. Self-improvement is not just about external success. It's about your mindset, emotional health, and overall well-being. You have to heal from past wounds so that you're not carrying emotional baggage into your next relationship. You have to develop self-confidence. One of the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to love is trying to force things to happen on their timeline. They get anxious when the right person hasn't shown up yet. They compare their journey to others, wondering why their friends are getting married while they're still waiting. They settle for relationships that don't truly fulfill them just to avoid being alone. But here's what you need to understand. Love is not a race. It's a journey. And if you try to rush the process, you might end up with someone who is completely wrong for you simply because you weren't willing to wait for the one who is true. Patience is hard, especially when you feel like you've been waiting forever. It's even harder when you see other people moving forward in their relationships while you're still single. But the moment you start comparing, the moment you start doubting is the moment you lose sight of your own path. Because everyone's timeline is different. Everyone's love story unfolds in its own unique way. And just because it hasn't happened yet, doesn't mean it won't happen for you. Think about it. How many times in your life have you wanted something so badly, only to realize later that the timing wasn't right? Maybe you thought you were ready, but in hindsight, you see that there were lessons you needed to learn first. Maybe the person you were 5 years ago wouldn't have been able to handle the kind of love you truly deserve. Maybe the things you once settled for are things you would never tolerate now. That's the beauty of patience. It gives you time to grow into the person who is fully prepared for the relationship you desire. Because love isn't just about finding someone, it's about being ready when the right one comes along. But here's where most people get stuck. They mistake waiting for passivity. They think patience means doing nothing, but that's not what this is about. Trusting the process doesn't mean sitting around and waiting for love to magically appear. It means actively preparing yourself for it. It means doing the inner work, healing from past relationships so you don't carry old wounds into something new. Learning how to communicate effectively so that when the right man comes along, you can build something healthy and lasting. Developing self-love and confidence so that your happiness isn't dependent on whether or not you're in a relationship. It means living your life to the fullest, because love isn't meant to be your entire identity. It's meant to be a beautiful addition to a life that is already fulfilling. Too many people put their lives on hold while waiting for the right person, but that's not how it works. The right man will be drawn to you when you are fully immersed in your own growth, happiness, and purpose. It means trusting that what is meant for you will not pass you by, that the right man will come at the right time, and when he does, you won't have to force it, chase it, or manipulate it into existence. It will flow naturally because it was always meant to be. And the reality is, sometimes the waiting period is where you become the person you were always meant to be. Sometimes the most powerful transformations happen in the space between where you are and where you want to be. Sometimes the delay is actually a gift because it's giving you time to level up in ways you never expected. It's easy to doubt the process when you don't see immediate results. It's easy to get frustrated when it feels like nothing is happening. But just because you can't see progress doesn't mean it's not happening behind the scenes. Sometimes the universe is aligning things for you in ways you can't yet understand. Sometimes the reason you haven't met the right person yet is that you're still becoming the person who will attract and sustain that kind of love. Because here's the truth, when it's right, you won't have to force it. You won't have to chase. You won't have to convince someone to choose you. The right man will see your value without you having to prove it. He will recognize your worth without you having to fight for it. So instead of worrying about when it will happen, shift your focus to who you are becoming in the meantime. Instead of stressing over the timeline, trust that things are unfolding exactly as they should. Instead of settling for someone just to fill the space, believe that something greater is on its way. Because when you truly trust the process, you stop operating from a place of desperation. You stop allowing fear to dictate your choices. You stop clinging to people who were never meant to stay. And that's when the magic happens. When you let go of the need to control everything and simply allow love to find you in its own time. When you step into a place of confidence, faith, and self-worth. When you realize that your happiness is not dependent on a relationship, but on the life you build for yourself. And in that space, when you are fully aligned, fully at peace, and fully in love with yourself, the right man will find you exactly when he's supposed to.